Hello again, welcome back. This podcast is going to be a continuation of the What is the Simulation series. So this will form part 5. But in this podcast, I'm not going to necessarily directly address the simulation. I want to take the opportunity to address something that's been said recently and many, many times throughout history, which is, quote, "They will do anything to stop this information getting out," unquote. Now, for anybody who's tried, I think it's fair to say that they are met with resistance, and some people have been killed, and this can be evidenced throughout history. When we have a ruling class or a ruling body and there is dissent of any kind, it is always met with resistance. So I think this might be a good place to start in terms of what is actually meant by that phrase, they will do anything to stop this information getting out, and the reasons for it, the reasons why it exists. And I think from there we can come to an understanding of why resistance is the first response, and hopefully explore a hidden layer to that. Now, when I hear that sentence, they will do anything to stop this information from getting out, really all I've got to go by in my own personal experience is the many ways that I have been silenced, or there have been attempts to silence me in the last 20 years or so, online. And there have been occasions in my offline life where the same has happened. Now, I think if for anybody who has any emotional intelligence or any empathy at all, it's pretty clear to see that saving face is a survival instinct, an egotistical survival instinct, and overall it's useless, because when the hand that's being raised and speaks out is doing so out of concern, anguish, or just wanting for the right thing to be done, and we're met with resistance, that's really what we're looking at, is that the people who have implemented measures for and against we the people obviously don't want to be put in a position of embarrassment. Now, I know there's a whole bunch of other reasons, and I'll get to that in a minute, but at the most fundamental level, it's obviously an egotistical thing. I mean, if you go to anybody who's in a power position over you and you tell them you're not happy with your conditions, well, no, I mean, how would you feel if someone came to you and said, I'm not happy with the way you're treating me, and you felt that you were doing a good job, or you felt that you already have enough going on and you're not open to complaints. or that they should just be grateful, or any other number of things that your defense mechanisms could throw up to offer resistance to that person as an initial response. Now, obviously, when we're talking about larger issues, the resistance that we meet is, it's about more than just your average thing. It's what we're putting forward here comes with a whole lot of implications and threatens to destabilize a power position that is thoroughly established over we the people. And if you know anything about that power position at all, then you will know that it is multifaceted, and it is primarily economically and power-based and defense. So when I hear that phrase, they will do anything to stop this information getting out, it's obviously a bit of a threat, and the ways that I have been threatened online and off are numerous. They do come as a shock. I'm not one of those. I'm not inclined to pretend that it doesn't affect me, or to think that it's funny. Because even if I'm not that particularly worried about it, I can see that there is something at work within the system, working through the people that do this, that implicates the system as offering its resistance, and as an objective the observation, it comes as no surprise in hindsight. It does always surprise me at the time, because I always hold open that little window of hope that's not going to happen, and I'm glad that that's still part of who I am. But I think when the threats and the silencing tactics become quite rapid and quite direct, but they're never coming from the people who are really behind all of this, I sort of look at where the resistance is coming from and try and figure out, why is that the case? Now, when we've been participating in a computer simulation for this long, and people spend a lot of time online, there's a certain mindset that is instilled in an individual user, that they are sitting in front of their command station, which is their computer, that they are protected from immediate physical contact with the people that they're speaking with, that unless they are, live streaming or presenting a video, their only method of communication is typing. And within that comfort zone, it's very easy to reel off, typed sentences that are, veiled attempts to silence or shut down what somebody else might have to say, especially if it does not, especially if it contradicts their own beliefs, their own position, their conditioning, and their convenience. And I look at that at a very simple level as being a reflection of what we're really dealing with the powerful elite, sort of. I don't really like to use the word elite, but the powerful people that are behind this, multi-billion-dollar companies, and I do understand that there's a lot riding on it. I mean, they're multi-billion-dollar companies. They've been established during an era where Good business was encouraged, where financial wealth was seen to be a measure of success, where the improvement of the standard of living and the creation of convenience were considered good things. And honestly, I'm not really saying that they're not. That's another conversation. But just to give us a glimpse of how I'm interpreting, the face value silencing tactics that I come up against, and how I read them as a reflection of an underlying position of the people in charge. Now, what I'd like to say on it is there's really nothing to be gained, actually, by resisting any call or cry for improvement, if what you're doing is for improvement. So instead of feeling that you're being opposed or challenged or confronted, it might be more helpful to consider that when we, the people, raise our hand, it is simply to let you know that we're on the same page, and we too want an improvement to our conditions. Unless that's not what your agenda is. So right there's a question. What, and I'm speaking to them as I say this, what is your agenda if you are adverse to receiving complaints from us about our conditions, therefore giving you an opportunity to improve them? If your agenda is to improve quality of life, conditions, encourage progress, and keep us on the right track for our collective well-being and survival as a species. And I think that somewhere in there's a bit of a dilemma that rears its head, because when money when money is a factor, and it obviously is, compromises are made. And perhaps somewhere in that, the compromises that have been made weren't always made for the right reasons or at the right time within the context that they needed to be. I understand that there are professional scientists who supply their research to the government, and professional scientists who are employed by multi-billion-dollar corporations to do their research to enable the company to continue to produce certain products en masse. And that somewhere in that, you might not appreciate little old me or anybody else coming up to you and saying, this is hurting people. If your scientists never made you aware of the fact that it could, if your scientists presented their research to you in such a way that did not factor in long-term consequences, or were presented in such a way that a psychologist or a psychiatrist might deem as psychopathic. The scientific world is a very objective realm, but I think where ethics need to be applied, we need to look to our scientists, the mental health of our scientists, the background of our scientists, the childhood conditioning of our scientists, how and what our scientists are rewarded for doing, what they are asked to do, the ethical principle and moral standards of our scientists. And somewhere in there, I think we'll find that as a general consensus, they have been lacking and negligent and psychopathic. I'll give you one example of this. This is for IBM. Ginny, if you're still around, I know there's a new CEO lurking somewhere, but if you're still around, Ginny. Back in 2000 at Almaden in San Jose, at your research centre there were two scientists who performed an experiment. It was called a quantum mirage that they discovered. I believe that was Christopher Eigler. Apologies if I've pronounced his surname wrong. And Michael Cromie. And together they were able to observe a mirage that they were able to produce unwittingly through a procedure that involved placing iron atoms on a copper surface in a circle and placing one iron atom at one end of that circle, sort of a bit like a satanic circle or a gladiator pit. And then with that one iron atom that was placed at one end of the circle, they, in simple terms, stuck a needle in it until it produced, or the whole overall effect produced some of its properties at the opposite end, facing it, within the circle. And this was noted and observed as being a quantum mirage. So let's have a look at that. Up front, this might not seem like a bad thing to you. It's an experiment. It's a scientific experiment. And experiments are all about, doing this, that, and the other and seeing what happens, right? I mean, that's what an experiment is. But if we look at the nature of an experiment and we step back from it a little bit, we can start asking certain questions. What compelled these two scientists to perform this experiment? Was it who they'd been taught by? Alex Settle? Are they conditioned to think in this way? Regardless, for them, they found that on this particular day that it was appropriate to create a satanic circle, a gladiator pit of iron atoms on a copper surface, and poke the crap out of one of them until a mirage appeared at the other end. Sorry for the long pause. I'm just sort of trying to bring some space to this line of thought so that hopefully some of those of you listening, and yourself too, Jenny, if you ever hear this, can get my meaning. When we're looking at the results of experiments, the nature of experiments, and what scientists do at a quantum level, I think we should first consider if we replaced each of those iron atoms in the experiment with a human being. And then we might get a better idea of the ethics behind it. The mindset behind it. Now, I could tell you straight up that for me personally, I find it absolutely reprehensible. I think it's a clear indication if I was a forensic psychologist or a psychiatrist and I had to examine these guys' mental health and I was looking at the kind of experiments they perform, well, I'd say that they're psychopaths. So when we have government departments and multi-billion-dollar corporations and companies relying on their scientists to provide them with the information they need for a variety of reasons, from defense to the simple manufacturing of consumer products, including iPhones, we need to perhaps pull our focus in their direction and have a little look at what really is going on there before we start saying things like they will do anything to stop this information getting out. Because I can tell you right now, I'm not interested in protecting the reputation or the feelings of a psychopathic scientist. So if that makes you guys feel any happier about me speaking, I'm glad. I'm actually prepared to let you sit off to one side for a minute and pass the buck somewhere else to your scientists who have advised you in this way, who have received payment for their work, but who have advised you in this way to produce equipment, defense tools, defense products, and an internet, and iPhones, and radio communication, and television towers. But they haven't really given you all the information. Perhaps they didn't experiment hard enough. Now, I think Marconi, when he discovered Morse code, did actually raise his hand and say that he wasn't sure whether he'd created something good or whether he'd simply created a menace. And then what happens? Well, there's an opportunity to use that sort of equipment for defense. There's an opportunity to profit from that sort of equipment. And for each time somebody raises their hand about it, their voice meets resistance because it's no longer supportive of the agenda of those in charge to move forward with their admirable plans. So there's a communication breakdown that's happening, and there's a certain level of refusal to listen to concerns, especially when they contradict the agenda that you may have. Now, I get it. I honestly don't know how you guys run massive corporations like that. It's multi-billion-dollar companies, AT&T, all the rest of them. Your quarterly profits are at $70 billion. I mean, it's, for me, I'm an average person, I think. I don't consider myself better or worse than anybody else. I still hurt the same. So, I get it. And hats off to those of you who have raised a civilization that you can feel proud of. What I'm saying here is that the people that you've been listening to, your scientists, probably didn't make a strong enough point about the dangers of these technologies, because they didn't consider that themselves, because most of them are insane. So it's a little bit of an irony. I'm not saying I'm not nuts, and I'm not saying you're not nuts, Ginny, or any of the rest of you. But I am saying that your scientists are nuts. Because if our modern civilization is pinned on the technology that we're employing. And the way that technology comes about is from the results of experiments that your scientists are conducting. And in more recent times, to do with network science, data science, algorithms, and all of these sorts of things. Well, we need to look at, who these are the guys down there rowing the oars. I mean, they're down there, ho, ho, heave, ho, rowing. But the direction that they've taken us in has brought us to this arrowhead where we are now sitting on opposite sides of the table, and I have to come to you and have this conversation about why we hear they will do anything to stop this information getting out. Who are we actually talking about? Is that what you're saying to me? Whether you're the average person, a scientist, a politician, or the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, is that honestly your position? Because if it is, it doesn't seem like a position that you would be taking with our collective well-being in mind, when the results of my research are put on the table to let you know that there's a problem. Wouldn't you want to know so that you can fix it? Unfortunately, the results of my research show that kicking down just about every cell tower in the world would be a good thing. And that's not going to go down well with AT&T or any other telecommunications company, because suddenly their income is shot unless they make it up some other way by putting us all back in landline communication. The mobile internet aspect of things it has to be pulled. It actually has to be pulled because it's not sustainable, because of the impact that it's having on human biology and our planet, our biosphere. It's actually not sustainable. So you can implement transhumanism if you want to, but it's just a cheat code. At the end of the day, there's not going to be anything left. And rather than continuing to express my anger with the leaders of nations and with the leaders of corporations behind this, and with the leaders in defence departments all over the world, and arms dealers and all the rest of it, Lockheed, Boeing, Raytheon, IBM, Microsoft, Google, Eclipse, Akamai, shadow companies, banks, Federal Reserve, stock market. Rather than me continuing to express my angst at you, I'm happy at this point to shift the focus, if that will help you feel more comfortable having this conversation. Let's have a look at the scientists and what happened that day at Al Marden in San Jose, California, when they conducted an experiment that would never be done on human beings except in a satanic ritual, and the implications of what they created, a quantum mirage. Trauma induced and observed. Dropping the level of that back to the average person and myself, If you come to me and you have something to say about something that I have shared with you, but you do it in such a way as that the amount of arrogance you put forward is foul-smelling to me personally. I see that as a form of resistance and as a way of stepping on me and the research that I have done and using it as a footstool to have your little say. Now, unless you can find a way of being helpful, or you can open the door for discussion, I tend to read those sorts of messages as the system having been programmed to encourage arrogance, egotistical commentary, and trying to silence dissent. And it's often the case that the average person will become a spokesperson for those further up who don't want to address this, or it's not convenient. Over 100 scientists all got together and collectively agreed about the hazards of 5G, but, the people who stand to lose something from not implementing it are going ahead with it anyway, with a whole bunch of lies to back it up. Because of their scientists. That's an interesting point. We got one group of scientists over here and another group of scientists over there. On what basis are we gauging the authenticity, reliability, and safety of the results that our scientists come up with, the information that our scientists come up with, if we haven't checked their mental health? Who are these people in social situations? How do they operate? They have openly expressed that they need to study our data online to get an insight into how humans work. Why? Don't you know how humans work? Are you not human? Are you a psychopath? Are you an insect? Were you not loved as children? How do these people move in social circles? Are they congenial? Are they sensitive? Are they authentic? What are their standards? What are their ethics? Because all the degrees and stuff on the piece of paper don't address any of that. Studying and learning in an institution, an official learning institution, is just a measure of how well we apply our intelligence to that pursuit. It says nothing about our standards, our values, our ethics, our morals, how centered we are in some common good, how we cannot be bought out. So when we have one group of scientists over here saying one thing, and they're coming from an ethical place, and another group of scientists over here saying another thing, and these scientists have been employed by multi-billion-dollar companies, and the multi-billion-dollar companies turn around and tell the government, no, it's all safe because our scientists said so, we're really not addressing the problem. We're still not addressing the problem. We're only addressing what it is that you want to do and what you want to go ahead with for your own reasons, which are not sustainable. If we cannot look back at the mistakes that we make and learn from them, we can only continue to create an unsustainable scenario. And that includes you guys. You're included in that. You don't just wipe us out, you do it to yourselves as well. And you might think that there's a lot to lose. What I'm suggesting to you is there's a lot less to lose than you think. And saving face that's a really incredible trade-off for the survival of our species on this planet. Just so nobody feels embarrassed. Just so nobody feels put out. It's a very frustrating reality for someone like myself who has to be, receive death threats and told that I'm crazy and get shut down in all other kinds of ways, and finally decide to speak on YouTube within the system about this. But I am coming to you with some sense of common decency. And I'm hoping that you can offer the same, please. I don't want to embarrass you. I'm pointing out that there's a problem. I don't think it started with you necessarily. I think it starts with your scientists. I think it starts with the people that you get to work on these projects. I think it's the people who do the coding to something like System 360. I think if we look at the mentality of those people and the type of intelligence that they applied to these projects, then we'd start to get somewhere. Then we could all be on the same page. Then we could all agree that mistakes were made. Then we could do something about it and find that the answer to fixing it is not as threatening to our collective well-being as you might think. If we're dealing with multi-billion-dollar companies, which a lot of you are, it's not that much of a lost cop if we were to work through this in a reasonable way. And as I've said, I one thing I can't do is protect the feelings of a psychopathic scientist. Maybe it's just as well they're scientists, because from what I've seen, if they weren't busy in labs, they'd be out in the street as serial killers. Or downstairs in some creepy basement with weird pictures on the walls, thinking about doing God knows what. I'm sorry if that offends the scientists among you that are not that, but I think you know the guys I mean. They're the ones who won't be named. They're the ones who work behind the scenes. They're the ones who get paid and live comfortable lives, feeling fantastic, like they've been a real help to everybody, while they conduct experiments that are a direct reflection of their frame of their state of mind, psychopathic. What's the reason for these experiments? If somebody's asking them to do it. And sometimes nobody's asking them to do it. So for the corporations, the big companies, the multi-billion-dollar this and that, who all think that you stand to lose something like face or billions of dollars for 1 year, it's not really a thing or the right position or an appropriate response to just sort of make threats or to try to stop information getting out, when by doing that you're showing everybody that you don't care about us and that you don't care about yourselves either. More importantly, You tell us that you don't care about yourselves either. And the question that I have is, why should the rest of us be held hostage by your desperation? I think we could all agree that we're desperate. So let's not kid ourselves by constantly assuming that we're all on some whole other page to each other when it's all the same page. We're all moved and motivated by the same things in terms of survival instinct. But real progress is about listening, not how much money you make in the quarter. Real progress is about understanding and genuinely caring about the well-being of others and our planet, not how much money you make every quarter. So we need to adjust that. If you're going to find it difficult, I understand. But just tell me that you're finding it difficult. Don't threaten me. When it comes to your iPhones, I believe that they're self-certified by Apple, right? They didn't even pass any thorough scientific testing. They weren't even checked properly. But there they are on the consumer market. Who are Apple scientists who ticked the boxes on that device and said it was all good to go? What's with the system in America that allows a company to self-certify its own products and put them on the market for consumption without a single user warning, and to make them available to children without a single age warning, age limit, age compliance? We're dropping the ball here. Dropped it a long time ago. Damage has been done. It continues to be done. We have to pull back, cut the crap. None of us likes to lose face. So you're not special if that's the feeling that you're having. None of us likes to lose money. So you guys aren't special if that's the feeling that you're having. And none of us like to feel that we're losing control. So you're not special if that's the feeling you're having. We need to get over that kindergarten hurdle, that knee-jerk defensive reaction, and try and open a window here so that we can be heard, so that you're listening, so that we understand your position and you understand mine. I won't be threatened, but I also won't be shy to tell you what I think. You're either going to be able to handle it or not. Scientists. For those of you that are Jurassic Park fans, what was his name? Jeff Goldblum's character, Dr. Malcolm something. Scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. I mean, sure, even the White House has got the National Science Association or whatever they're called, giving them research results every day and experiment results. And we could, back in Homeland Security back in 2008 or something, 2004. We could use the telecommunications network to track nuclear weapons. We could put something in cell phones that sends out a little blip and locates them. This was put forward by scientists as part of the Department of Homeland Security's research center. What a psychopathic statement, as if the people who are carrying the phones don't have a say. Sorry, I'm getting a little hostile. It's kind of difficult to hear it. psychopathic research, psychopathic suggestions. They're not normal. Everybody has to be on board with that. And to think that we the people aren't worthy of having a say or worthy of determining the quality of our own lives is erroneous. Anyway, bit of a heavy segment. Ginny, if you ever hear this, maybe you will, maybe you won't. I've got a feeling it'll reach you somehow through the airwaves. Sweet dreams. And my apologies for finding it so very difficult to speak with humility to people of your kind. CEOs of multi-billion-dollar corporations, I think obviously you live in a completely different realm to me. So straight up, it's going to be difficult. But I think if we let reason do the talking and put defences aside and hostilities aside, that there can be a general consensus that can be reached at some point in the hopefully near future. Because if we can't agree on it, you will be taking the rest of us and yourselves into a very dark place in this world. You're not going to like it. Neither are the rest of us. It's not sustainable. And that's all I really have to say on the issue of they will do anything to stop this information getting out. Don't threaten me. To the rest of you, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon.